popularization of polyphonic music came right in line with the beginning of the Renaissance. The Renaissance period is the beginning of a more humanistic age, and it is a time when many developments that were important for shaping Western culture's future occurred. It's also a time where patronage of the arts started to shift from being strictly a church thing to being both the church and the courts. There were a lot of secular views that became more accepted, and if you're not familiar with the term secular, that just means a non-religious, more humanistic outlook on things. Historic names that you should familiarize yourself with and associate with the Renaissance would be Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, Gutenberg, that's the guy who created the printing press, Shakespeare, and Martin Luther. Martin Luther we'll get back to again. He's a guy who set forth the Reformation, which basically divided the church. You had several great composers. We're going to come back to the great composers of the period, but Dupree, Palestrina, and Gabrielli are three of the big names you definitely want to be familiar with. During the Renaissance, choral and vocal musics were by far the more dominant musical types. Now, we've already talked about the Mass. The Mass continued to be a very popular musical type, and it was a choral musical type. The motet is very similar to the Mass, but it almost never, or I should say it never, involved a keyboard accompaniment or anything. It was always a cappella, and it was not part of the Catholic liturgy. It was, in almost all instances, a sacred work, but because it was not part of the liturgy, it left the composer to be a little more free to be inventive. He didn't have to have the set chant as a cantus firmus. Although the Mass and the motet involved the cantus firmus, the motets was a little more free to be played with, so to speak. Now, a madrigal is not a choral form. That is going to be a test question. Don't miss it. A madrigal is sung, but it is not sung by a choir. It is sung by a small number of people, generally 4 to 5 singers, and that's it. One singer per part, 4 to 5 parts. That makes it vocal chamber music, not choral music. Big difference. Now, the madrigal was generally sung in the vernacular, meaning it was sung in whatever the language was of the person who wrote it, and it was generally secular music as well. Often a lot more lively. It's a lot easier to be rhythmically creative with 4 to 5 singers as opposed to an entire choir. Let's see. What am I forgetting here? A couple terms here I didn't really cover. I need to. One, what is polychoral music? Polychoral music we're going to study a little bit more as we get to Gabrielli. But polychoral music is music that has multiple choirs singing simultaneously. Now, when you see the term homorhythmic, homorhythmic is something that developed in the Mass and the motet that basically involved all of the parts suddenly singing the same rhythm and singing the same words, so at least for a small section you would know what was being sung. Sometimes in all of the polyrhythmic music that you listen to with these polyphonic chants, you don't know what they're really singing. It makes it hard to tell. And going to a homorhythmic section was a chance to clear that up. Instrumental music during the Renaissance was primarily modeled after vocal music. The basic models for music were very similar to what you were just going over in the choral section, like the Rissikar. There we go. I'll spit him out. It's been a while. A Rissikar is very much like a motet or a mass, and the canzona is more like a motet. Generally, you would have your instruments grouped in small groups so that they sounded more like either a choir or a chamber ensemble. Your primary instruments were, well, in the string section, a lyre, which is very much like a small harp, a lute, which looks kind of like someone took a turtle and put strings on the front of it. It's a round-backed mandolin size instrument, but with a larger round back. The viol is kind of like a violin, but with a more square body. Wind instruments, the recorder. The recorder is kind of like a flute and a clarinet had some sort of strange offspring. Most of you have played a recorder in elementary school. It's generally a little plastic one that you take some music classes on. And to be quite honest, I am not sure what a schwam is. I wouldn't know if I heard one. And that's pretty sad, since I'm just about Dr. Carey. I don't know what the heck a schwam is. Anyway, keyboard instruments are a harpsichord and a clavichord. The main differences between harpsichords, clavichords, organs, and pianos, which come later, the pianoforte comes at the end of the Baroque period, is all of these keyboard instruments at this time were not dynamically sensitive. Whether you hit the key with all the force in your body or touched it lightly, it was still going to make the same volume. In the case of a harpsichord, the strings of the instrument are plucked, and it has a different sound than a piano, in which they're hit. So it's a little different sound when you hear a harpsichord. It has a more older tone, and if my piano was in reach, it's got a harpsichord sound on it. Well, what the heck. You can't see me walking over here anyway. Alright. This is the sound of a piano. This is the sound of a harpsichord. And again, no matter how hard you hit the keys of a harpsichord, it's going to sound the same volume.